Want to take your product management career to the next level on your schedule? Now you can with Pragmatic Institute's Product Manager certification in a new on-demand format. Learn proven frameworks, market-driven strategies, and real-world best practices, now available in a fully flexible, self-paced format. With interactive activities, case studies, and flexible learning, you'll gain the skills and certification to drive real impact for your team and organization. Get the world's most sought-after product certification, now available anytime, anywhere.
And welcome to the Pragmatic Product Chat series, where we tackle the biggest challenges facing today's product management, product marketing, and other market and data-driven professionals with some of the best minds in the industry. I'm Rebecca Calageris for Pragmatic Institute and your host for this episode. More than 250,000 companies, organizations, and institutions in over a dozen countries use the product our guest today has launched, managed, and marketed. He has experience with startups, edtech, and not-for-profits, consulting, and more. And he's here to talk to us about his journey from product to CEO. So without further ado, let me introduce Marc Rubner, CEO of Building Intelligence. Welcome, Marc.
Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So we often talk about people, and there's the saying that we should, as product people, be the CEO of our product, right? That's our job. But you've gone this step further. So we're very excited to have you on to talk about your journey today and some of the lessons you learned along the way.
Where do you want to start?
All right. Well, I always like to start with your origin story. Like, what is it that got you passionate about product and what it is that you do?
Yeah. So real quick, I guess the origin at a grad school was a marketing analyst for a number of media companies. Started off, coming out of grad school, analytics, audience measurement was my forte. It's what I hung my hat on early in my career in magazines, in marketing, in media companies. And somehow the biggest stroke of luck I ever got handed to me in my career was to get a position in the marketing team at marketing research team at American Express. So I was still in my 20s when that happened. And at American Express, they were managing about $30 million worth of primary and secondary market research a year. And I was responsible for a couple $1 million of that. We were, we each had our little patch that we worked in. And the craziest thing happened where I got to work for an internal group that was as entrepreneurial as you could possibly imagine at a big, giant company like American Express. They were thinking so far ahead from a technology perspective about how to improve operations for the B2B side of the business. So focused on the merchants who accept the American Express card as their base of customers. How do we make life easier for them? Eliminate mail, eliminate faxing, eliminate paper, and use this new thing called software to do that. Now, this is the mid-90s, so I'm dating myself. And I started to support this group from a marketing research perspective, and they exploded. They were just doing all the right things. Leadership was making all the right decisions. The stars were aligning in terms of technical capabilities at the time. And they were looking for product managers to formalize this, to take the next step of maturity in this business they were building. And they asked me if I'd be interested in applying for one of the product manager positions. I said, yeah, absolutely. What's a product manager? I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And so I did my research. And actually, what's funny is, thinking back, I think we were one of the early adopters of the Pragmatic Institute training. And I remember going through our coursework because we wanted to emulate what was being done at Procter & Gamble, what was being done at General Electric, because those folks were on our board. And we were getting a lot of insight. Plus, we had product managers on the card side of the business, the consumer side of the business. Now we needed to match that on the business side of it. So I became one of the first product managers at American Express on the B2B side of the business. And that was my start in product management, marketing, developing and bringing products to market where problems could be solved through technology. Savings could be seen on both sides of the equation, and we could start looking like a modern financial services company to our hundreds of thousands of merchants. So that statistic that you read at the top is a bit, it's sort of what I always put at the top of my resume, because almost every merchant who accepts the American Express card uses one of the products that I developed and still does today. So that's where it comes.
That is so cool. And it's one of those things that gets us excited, I think, as product two people, thinking about the impact we have and the number of people that we can impact by the stuff that we do.
And it's from the small dry cleaner on the corner to United Airlines, to Marriott, to big restaurant chains and retail chains. They're all in that customer base. They're all using the same product.
Amazing. Pretty wild. Yes. And then, I think the other thing that sort of path gave you was a variety of different perspectives that serves you both in product and marketing, but also in your CEO role.
Yeah. I was, again, lucky to be at a company like Amex where I could do a lot of different things if I so chose. So another big break came when we started to have major success on the software side. We started to see that hockey stick and that up and to the right movement in terms of sales revenue. And we really didn't have the operational infrastructure to support it. So the good news was we're going gangbusters. The bad news was the operational team wasn't quite mature enough. So they came to me and said, Mark, do you want to go move out to Phoenix, Arizona and run operations and take over for this organization that wasn't doing as well as it needed to? I was like, absolutely, because I had just broken my finger shoveling snow in the winter in New York City. I was like, hell yeah, I want to go to Arizona. Get me out of the snow. So I went from managing a small group of Ivy League MBAs and Mark to managing 60, 75 non-exempts in an operations environment like this. And the magic words to alleviate my fear of moving into that operational role was, don't worry, Mark, you'll learn from the best. And that was a really big win for me because it was American Express. It's the world's most respected service brand. And if I was going to learn about operations, customer support, and implementation, I was going to do it from the best. And so it made the move a lot less daunting for me, but it was a career change for me that gave me the start of the breadth of experience that ultimately led to my credibility as first a general manager, P&L owner, and ultimately a CEO. Without taking that risk, without moving into that role, I don't have the pedigree. I don't have the breadth of experience that most product managers, marketing, lifelong have. And that was a big win for me to get the breadth. Then it became sales, became network operations, it became business development, it became a whole slew of other round out your resume type of experiences that I think led to being able to make the transition from product into a CEO role.
Interesting. So a couple of times you've already done so of course I said yes, right? That feels like maybe one of the early lessons you learned, but you are saying yes to some things that may feel like they're on a different career path. And I'd love to kind of think about both why you think they asked you and tapped you for this role and why we were like, yeah, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I think the answer to the why me is desperation. No question about it. And the truth is that I had built what existed. So like every good product manager, I knew it inside out. I wasn't going to allow anyone in the room to be smarter than me about the product itself. I wasn't the smartest person in the room about everything, but if the topic was the product, I knew more than anybody. That was my role. That was what I had to commit myself to. So with that knowledge and basically with the background I had, they were confident that I could at least learn about what makes for good operations, a good implementation, good support structure. But I had the product knowledge. I understood the inner workings. I understood the customer base extremely well. And that was all very important. But here's the big change. The big change when you go from a product role or marketing role into an operations role is you have to manage the business every day in an operational role. In other words, every day matters. And look, in product, of course, everybody wants to be productive every day. In marketing, it's just not reality. It takes time to build campaigns, to build product specs, to interview customers, to read the research. Of course, it takes time to do that. Not every day is output. In operations and support, every day is output. So you have to manage the business every day, and you have to learn how to do that, which takes training, takes skill, takes learning. So that's the biggest difference for product managers who want to make the move into other areas of the business. Just not so you know, you're going to have to go from managing the business over some period of time to managing the business every single day.
Well, and that's so interesting, right? Because one of the things that we see product managers struggle with sometimes, if they came from more of an operational role, if they were a subject matter expert, is that there isn't the things to check every day, right? There's not like a check mark every day. There's not the to-dos. So it's interesting, like there's both sides of that, right? There is, but you get that satisfaction. But on the other hand, you have to manage every day without, I imagine, losing sight of the longer picture too. And that balance would have to be tough.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the other things I learned was about that little thing called the decision horizon, which if you take into account this concept, it calls for a change in perspective depending on what level you are in the business. Well, if you are a CEO, your decision horizon is 2-3 years down the road. You're doing things today that will ultimately benefit the organization a couple of years down the road. You're hiring, you're planning, you're innovating, you're financing, right? That's not all going to pay off today. It's going to pay off down the road. When you're a manager or an analyst every day, you have to do something every day. That's your decision horizon. You have to make decisions every day. When you're a product manager, you kind of have to live in both of those worlds. You have things you kind of have to do every day. You have to get these things done, but you also have to be thinking about what your product, what your market, what your innovation, what your technology capabilities look like a year from now. And or whatever the right answer is 2 years from now. If you're not doing both, or if you're uncomfortable doing both, you sign up for the wrong vocation, because you have to be able to do that. So the decision horizon concept works a little bit different in product management, because no matter what level you're at, you have to do that every day.
You know, we hear more and more these days, which is a good thing. Completely biased point of view, right? About product professionals leading some of those executive roles at tech companies. I would be curious, in your perspective, what are some of the strengths that product management brings to that role? And then we're going to talk about maybe some of our blind spots too, that maybe you had such a wide variety of experiences you didn't have, but that others do.
Decision making, prioritization. Product managers do that every day, at least good ones. They're prioritizing every day. They're making decisions about what to leave in, what to take out, per Bob Seger, right? You got to be able to make those decisions, prioritize every day. It's usually in the form of requirements, but it's the same concept. Make a decision every day, prioritize every day. That will serve you well as a GM and as a CEO. That will serve you well as a C-level leader, no question. You also get, if you're doing it right, you're getting a outside-in perspective of your world. What's out there that I need to address? What is out there that I need to solve for? What is out there that I need to be aware of to minimize risk in my outside in? Those are great perspectives to have as you get into C-level roles and into leadership roles, no question. I guess on the downside, I would argue that if you're too knee deep in product, you can get the perspective that everything begins and ends with product. And it's not necessarily the case. Sometimes everything begins and ends with your sales and distribution. Sometimes it begins and ends with your financial commitments. Sometimes it begins and ends with re-engineering efforts, right? It's not always a starting point from a product. Product is not always the starting point. And if you can lose that bias, that will serve you well to take a bigger picture outside in perspective. So that's the danger sometimes, is a better product isn't always the answer to growth, right? It's just not. Sometimes it is, but it's not always the answer. And if product managers get wrapped around that axle and continue to invest in polishing the brass, for example, if you're polishing the fenders on a really nice Lamborghini, not going to make them go faster, right? So those are some of the things I think of when I think of some of the blind spots.
I think one of the other things that you learned early on from your experience, and because you've been in both product and marketing, is that you have, and you and I have talked about this before, a really strong bent towards paying attention and partnering with the go-to-market side.
The go-to-market side, in my mind, is very clearly defined. And it's a three-legged stool of marketing, sales, and product. Now, some organizations combine roles, I get it, but functionally and from a leadership perspective, if you're developing your go-to-market plan in absence of any of those three leaders, you're going to fail. All three of those leaders need to be in the mix while constructing the plan, not just executing it, while constructing the plan. That way, you have a group of folks who are ultimately going to execute the plan who have given birth to it. And if you give birth to it, you're more likely to be accountable to it. You're more likely to be emotionally connected to it. You're more likely to fight for its success than if some CEO comes down and says, here's the go-to-market plan, boom. Or if the head of sales comes in and says, hey, this is what we need to do, and drops the tablets at your feet. Doesn't work that way. It's not that's a bad recipe. So to me, you start with a go-to-market team. It involves these three leaders, and you build the plan out from there. That's a recipe for success in my mind.
Yeah. Powerful one, right? And again, I think it's a perspective that serves you well in the CEO role, as well as it served you well as a product person, right?
I, as a matter of fact, as we're talking, I've constructed that go-to-market plan here at Building Intelligence because we're at a point now of rapid growth where if we're not thoughtful about how we execute the next stage of our go-to-market, we're going to fail to optimize our potential. And I'm now, when did I join? January 7th. So I'm here for exactly 2 months, almost to the day. I'm finally at a point where I can start to orchestrate the go-to-market team, the operations team, and the product team into these pods or into these engines, if you would, to propel us forward and really accelerate our growth.
That's going to be exciting to watch. It's going to be exciting to watch.
It's going to be exciting to watch. It's going to be even more exciting, getting kicked in the teeth every week.
As happens. Right? Yes. One of the other parallels that we talked about in preparation for this conversation is that people know the titles product manager and they know the title CEO, but that doesn't necessarily always translate to understanding what it is that you're doing, right? Like there's like a mystery of you in CEO. And again, many people struggle with that with product. And I thought it was really interesting, your approach to that and how important the emphasis you've put on being able to really describe what you do to other parts of the organization, hiring functions, and those partners.
Look, it's interesting. It has occurred to me that with that weird title comes a certain approach that folks will take. And in the healthiest of organizations, it's no different than how anyone else interacts in the company. That would be great if that was always the case. It's just not. And I think what folks sometimes get a little bit concerned about is, does he have time for this? Is this worth his time, her time? This is something he or she's going to care about. And to be clear, if someone has a great idea or if someone has uncovered a challenge, if somebody is struggling or if somebody is excelling, there is nothing more important. Yes, I have time for this. I have more than enough time for this. And that's the hard thing to get across is I think a lot of people think that every CEO is Jamie Dimon or Steve Squeri or whomever. Right? No, I'm one of 30 people here in this building, and I have nothing but time for every single new idea, every single challenge, every single dispute that needs to be resolved, whatever the case may be. Absolutely, I do. And I would hate to miss out on some really great perspective on the business if I didn't have that perspective. And I always struggled with, when information came to me secondhand, my first reaction was, why don't they tell me? Why don't I hear? Well, they didn't want to bring it up to the CEO. So now I'm not Mark, I'm the CEO. And it's debilitating and unnecessary. There's no moat around the office here, right? It doesn't work that way. But I wish that folks understood, no matter where you are in the organization, especially if you're in product, by the way, especially if you're in product, because you're an engine that's driving the company, right?
Yeah.
Why would I not want to hear what you're thinking? Why would I not want to understand what challenges you have? Why would I not want to go out of my way to solve them? You're running product, or you're part of the product machine. I need to know these things. But it's kind of difficult. Everyone sort of feels very apologetic when they come in to talk to you, when they occupy some of your time. I really hate that. I just wish it was solvable. So I do my best to make sure these conversations are productive for them.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be for me.
And sometimes too, especially in certain organizations, the executive team, the rest executive team thinks it's helping you by shielding you, right? Like, he doesn't have time for this. This shouldn't be him. And sometimes not only is it, that's really interesting, I have time, but sometimes like it is your expertise or it is an area of focus. And that filter is, to your point, a disadvantage for all sides.
Exactly. Couldn't agree more. And if I could snap my fingers, I'd make it go away. When it comes to the functional leadership, I try my best to help absolve them of the pressure they may feel to keep bad news away, or to keep my time from being spent with problems that they may not deem worthy of the CEO. It's never the case. So I work to do that. It doesn't always, I'm not always successful, but yeah, I do try to work to do that. Yeah.
So we were talking a lot about the path from product to CEO. I also think it's important for everyone listening to that is not the right path for everybody, right? And that's perfectly okay. When did you realize it was your path?
All right. I'm going to try to keep this brief, but there was a moment. It's wild. I was running, I was P&L owner, general manager for about $350 million worth of business at Blackboard, which at the time was the world's largest education technology company. I had 2 lines of business, which represent exactly half the company. And the board of directors decided they wanted to carve out one of the pieces of the business. So it was about $100 million, and we were looking to get 4 to 5x for a typical, exit strategy. And I was tasked with going on the road to potential acquisitions. So whether they were private equity companies or competitors, strategic, I was the one leading the conversation. So working with finance, working with bankers, working with consultants, you develop this process, you develop the deck, you develop the speech, you develop presentation, you bring everyone on board, and it's really rapid. I mean, it's almost like speed dating.
So fun.
Because you can have these conversations, you can have 4 conversations in 3 days and just repeat the same stuff over and over again. And as we were going through and I think at that time I went through, no joke, I think we did 18 of these in about a 2-month process. And I remember thinking at some point, wow, I'm handling my business here. I'm able to answer these questions. I'm coming across as credible. I'm getting good feedback. And the object of the game was wherever this carve-out company wound up, I would be the CEO for at least some period of time. And if the acquiring company decided they didn't like me, they get rid of me. If they decided they like me, to keep me on, whatever the case may be. But I was going to head it up. And that was going to be my first CEO opportunity because I was already a general manager. By the way, dirty little secret, general manager meant you got product and marketing reporting to you and everything else was in a matrix. So good luck managing. So I had to learn how to do that. That's a whole other conversation. That's worthy of a podcast in and of itself. But back to the product end of it, the marketing end of it, that's who they appoint as a P&L leader. That's how important product is in a product-driven organization, right? You're the first among equals, is what you are, right? You're the Supreme Court justice. You don't have any bigger vote than anyone else, but you run the show. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's sort of the best way I could say it. So we did, and I was feeling really good, and we got an offer. We got moved through the process, and the board of directors declined the offer. Mm-hmm. They ultimately decided they didn't want to go through with the carve out. And the biggest kick in the teeth was the reason why. The reason why was, Mark, the product line's too profitable. The deal won't surpass the value of the EBITDA. We're going to keep it. So basically, I had done too good a job of making the business profitable for them to sell it off at that time. Not saying I'm the world's, it's not about me. It's just this bizarre math that maybe they should have done before I had 18 conversations. I hope nobody sees this who knows who I'm talking about, but there you have it. So anyway, but I had a big dose of confidence from that process. I really started to believe that I was a credible candidate for CEO role just based on these conversations, because I was in a room with some really super smart people from private equity companies, from our competitors, who really, really gave me some very productive feedback about my style, presentation, capabilities, whatever. So it was a big boost of confidence. I said, you know what? All right, I can do this. I can run this company. It was a $100 million company. I could run it. Everyone believes I can run it, or they're lying to me, one or the other, but all right, let's go. And I decided then I was going to pursue a CEO opportunity as my next step. Mm-hmm. Rebecca, honest to goodness, I never got started on that. I never did anything to push the peanut forward in my packaging of myself. I just got a phone call out of nowhere from an executive recruiter who was looking for CEO for a company called Donor Drive. And lo and behold, I got the position. And, from October of 18, and then starting in January of 19 was my first CEO position. So that's how it happened.
No, it's a great story. And it's interesting that a big part of it for you was, obviously you enjoyed that process, right? You enjoyed the acquisition discussions, the management meetings, but you really put a pin on it is confidence, right? Moving from thinking this is interesting to thinking and feeling and getting feedback that this was possible.
Yeah. And let's think about how the CEO role maps to a product manager or a product executive role. You may directly run 2 to 3 pieces of the business and have direct impact, but you're responsible for the entire line of business. So too bad, so sad, sales doesn't report to you. You still are responsible for sales. Too bad, so sad that IT doesn't report directly. Too bad, you're still responsible for innovation, getting it out the door, right? So you learn how to manage that business as a business, not just as a product. And that's lesson number 1 in the analog between product leader and CEO. Now just scale it a little bit more, right? Just scale it a little bit more, and then you've got the makings of a CEO if you can be successful in the product owner role, for sure.
Nice. So if you were coaching product managers, which you have a bunch right now listening, who are interested eventually in doing the CEO role, what would be some advice you would give them?
Take a broad view of the business, get uncomfortable with, get yourself into uncomfortable conversations around things you don't particularly dive into today: finance, legal, contracts, HR, arbitrage, all of the things that you may not be focusing on technology, you focus on technology, you focus on market. That you understand very well. That's great. Always get outside of your comfort zone and be prepared to have conversations with the CFO. Be prepared to have conversations with the head of HR. Be prepared to have conversations with the head of legal so that you can understand some of the challenges that they face in helping you bring the best product to market. That will give you breadth. The second thing I would do is always know where you're going to be X years from now, whatever that time frame is, 1, 2, 3. If you only focus your decision horizon in the short term, you're not going to have a lot of credibility in a CEO interview process. One of the main questions someone's going to ask you is, how do you describe the before and after from when we hire you as CEO to a couple of years down the road? What's changed? What are we looking at? Because now I'm a board member probably, or I'm an investor who's interviewing you. Well, if I'm the CEO and I'm asking you, Rebecca, what does this product look like 2 years from now? And you can't answer that, then you can't answer it for the bigger piece of the business. So you've got to be able to answer the before and after question. What does it look like today? What does it look like tomorrow? And don't just tell me about the technical features. I want to know what market impact you're making 2 years from now. I want to know what changes about our customer base. I want to know why we're more sticky than we were today, a year and a half from now. I want to know why our competitors are out of business 2 years from now and we're not. I want to know why we will be out of business in 2 years if we don't do these X, Y, and Z things, right? All of that is the same thinking that a CEO owes to his or her board every single day. So that's the advice I give. Be longer term minded, be focused on the before and after from this is what it looks like today, this is what it looks like tomorrow perspective, and get uncomfortable learning about the things that you don't necessarily dive into on your day-to-day that you're going to have to understand and learn.
It's great advice. Something we talk about frequently on the show is like, sometimes people feel like, once I get the title and I have the authority, I'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. It's never the case, right?
I hate the word authority. Right? I hate that word. If you want authority, join the military, right? And that's great. Go for it. That's not what this is about. It's not about authority at all. It's about agency and accountability.
Yes.
If you're going to run a P&L, let's say, at a company in a matrix environment, let's come back to this. This is great. There's a great connective tissue here. You're not going to have authority over your sales team potentially, over your IT team perspective. You've got to get them on your side, delivering an overweighted share of mind to you based on agency, based on how you treat them, based on your adaptive leadership skills in being inquisitive, in providing them with the resources they need to be successful, in holding your end of the bargain up so that when you're asking them to do things above and beyond, they know you've just done the same thing for them. It sounds transactional. It's not. That's not what I mean. What I mean is you've got to have that adaptive leadership skill set because you will not always be in an authoritative position. Oh, and by the way, if anyone thinks when they become CEO, you just start ordering people around, wow. Wow. I got a cold shower for you. No, not at all. Not only isn't it that way, but it shouldn't be that way.
Absolutely not.
Everyone at this company, everyone at Donor Drive, for sure, was a hell of a lot smarter than me and a hell of a lot knowledgeable about that piece of the business than me. Oh, by a factor of 10x. Same thing here. Everyone is smarter than me. All I'm doing is taking advantage of that intellect and directing it into a common purpose, into a common end state. And then my job is to get them what they all need to be successful and constantly remind them where we're going. We're not going here. Don't do the things that are getting us here. We're going here. Do the things that get us here. I'm not telling them how to do it because I don't know how to do it. I'm telling them where we need to be. Greatest thing someone ever said to me. So I had a product at Donor Drive, a lady named Casey Cupoletti, top Mount Rushmore of people in my ecosystem my entire career. She's a ridiculously brilliant, phenomenal product leader, built by far the best product in the space competitively, brilliant lady. And every once in a while I would screw up and I would try to tell her the answer to the problem instead of just tell her the problem.
Yeah.
And I did that often enough where she finally came to me and said, Mark, just tell me the problem. Don't tell me anything else. I don't want to know anything else. Mark, what problem are we trying to solve? And 99.9% of the time, that problem was going to be solved if I just articulated that and shut my mouth up and let her go do her thing and was there for her when she needed me. Big win for her just to have that conversation with me and say, Mark, just tell me the problem. And the extent to which we solved it was directly related to how well I articulated the problem. If I articulated the problem really super well, that sucker got solved quickly. If I fumbled around with it, wasn't clear about it, gave contradictory messaging, then yeah, we fumbled around. Worse, if I tried to tell her the answer to the problem, oh my gosh, that was a disaster. Not because of her, because of me. So that's how successful CEOs operate. I think Patrick Lencioni has a book called The Advantage. And if I do this right, if I remember right, there are 4 things that create a healthy organization. You have to have A players on the leadership team. You have to have A players on the leadership team. If you don't have a healthy organization. So you have to make hard decisions about who you're hiring. The second thing is you have to all be aligned on where you're going. There can be no dissent. There can be debate. There can be arguments. There could be knife fights at dawn. No problem. But once you get to the point, and violence is never an answer, Rebecca. once you get that consensus and everyone understands where we're going, then there's only 2 remaining things. You have to communicate that to everybody in your ecosystem, and then you have to do it again on a constant basis because it will always tweak. It will always have a little bit of flavor to it. A little hair will grow on it, right? But you've got to be able to do those 4 things. That's a sign of a healthy organization. So if you have A players, you're at least 25% of your way to success, probably more like 90% of your way to success. Because what I learned is, oh my gosh, when smart people try to solve problems, good things are going to happen.
It's such a strong correlation to when we talk about what makes a good product person, thinking about when you were like, obviously focus on the problems. There are people that are smarter and better at their jobs, right? That is the hill I see product people fall on down the most, right? Where they're like telling development what to do. Like these developers or marketers, right? They're not providing the information, explaining the problem and giving the context. They're trying to dictate how it goes. And then they're frustrated when the other party doesn't do it well.
Right. Yeah. Again, that's a perfect example, Rebecca. Tell me what problem you're trying to solve. And don't tell me about features. Don't tell me about what feature you're looking to inject into the product. That to me is not the right way to do it. The right way to do it is tell me what workflow needs to be improved here. Tell me how it's done today. Tell me how you, as a product manager, envision this workflow when you improve it through our product. Okay, I can do that. Now hand it to a highly competent technical leader and watch how great that comes out. Because not only are they going to apply their technical acumen to getting it there, they're going to get awful creative and awful excited about solving the problem because you didn't tell them how to do it. You just sent them off on a mission to solve the problem or to improve the process. That's empowering. That's exciting. You know, if the board of directors tells a CEO, Mark, you got to grow at 20% a year, and this is how you're going to do it. I understand the 20% a year. Do not tell me how to do it. because you have no idea how to do it. That's why you hired me. So in fact, I'm going to tell you how we're going to do it. And if I do a bad job of articulating it or supporting it, then we should have a conversation. But if I know we have to grow 20% a year and I've laid out a plan and everyone goes, holy crap, that's actually a pretty logical plan. I like it. What do you need to be successful? Now we have an organization that's ready to grow 20% a year.
Yeah.
Right? So whether it's a CEO talking to the board or a product manager talking to whomever, it's the same concept. It's the same exact concept.
Absolutely. All right. It's an interesting story too, where we're talking about your journey to CEO, and there's lessons about how to make that journey, but then there's also lessons that you've given us about how to be better at the job we have today. So I think it's a really great conversation, and I appreciate the time.
And it's the same skill set, right? It's just swap out the roles, swap out the levels, doesn't matter. Don't worry about the levels. Don't worry about the content. It's the process that counts. Here's another interesting, if I'm interviewing a head of product, I'm going to ask one important question. How do you get from here to there? How do you get from this point in the product life cycle to that point in the product life cycle? I've got to be able to hear back an answer that includes some repeatable, scalable process. Step one is this, step two is this, step three is this. I tweak this, or I don't always do that, but these are the 3-4 things that have to be in my workflow in order for me to get from point A to point B. I don't care what that is, by the way. I don't care if it's, well, monkeys come flying around and start serving coffee, and then the machine that makes the milk sort of squirts milk in there, and then I get some sugar. I don't care. As long as you have if you're talking to me, you've probably been successful. You've probably done a lot of things well. Just tell me how you do it. And don't talk to me in vague terms at 30,000 feet. Tell me exactly how you go to market. Tell me exactly how you prioritize product capabilities. Tell me how you know a problem is worth solving. Tell me how you know what, if I give you $1 million, how would you invest it? I don't know anything about your product line. That's the right answer. Now, how have you invested it before? What are some of the criteria you're going to lay at my feet in order to help make that decision? That's all I want to know. Because I'm not smart enough to tell you how to do it. I just want to know that you have a repeatable, documentable, scalable process that has driven your success in the past and will probably drive your success going forward.
Yeah. No, this was great. And I think that's a really good point too, because it shows that you have a thoughtful path, but also product decisions or organizational decisions, whichever role you're in, you're going to be having to do them over and over and over. Right. And so knowing that there is a framework involved that's proven is key.
Dirty little secret to all of it is you think your path is unique. You think the organization you're in is unique. Guess what? It's not. The same problem's going to come up no matter where you go. The same opportunities, the content will change. The dates will change. The geography. I'm solving 90% of the problems I'm solving at Building Intelligence are the same problems I was faced with at Dun. Now, did I solve them all? No. But is there a big surprise? Not really. It's just like, most customers think that their requirements are unique, and no, you're not. Well, pretend you are, because I want you to think that I think you're unique, but I've heard this 25 times, so let's get on with the show, right?
Yeah.
That's really important to understand that.
Absolutely. All right, Marc, I thoroughly appreciate you having come. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. A lot of fun. I appreciate the thoughtful questions.
Absolutely. All right. That does it for today's episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And don't forget to join us next week when we tackle another great topic designed to elevate our product, our company, and our career.